The Economics of a Long Life. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Quote, "You will have a long life on the earth," end quote. This promise, which accompanies the fifth commandment about honoring your father and mother, is becoming more true all the time. And there are economic implications. Richard McKenzie, writing in the Wall Street Journal recently, made the point that as folks live longer, they accumulate more money. That kind of makes sense. The title of Mr. McKenzie's article is "Americans Are Living Longer and Prospering," and the subtitle is "Longer Lifespans Are an Unappreciated Cause of the Increase in Wealth Concentration," end quote. Yep, that really gets under the skin of the Thomas Piketty crowd. Yeah, he's the French economist who's pointed out economic inequalities in his books titled The Economics of Inequality and the latest, Time for Socialism. Like our current President Joe Biden, Piketty likes to complain about the concentration of wealth among a smaller population. Certainly you want people to live longer, don't you? Well, who would ever be for shorter lifespans? The death crowd, I guess. Yeah, more on that later though. Oh, there is something of a statistical anomaly going on here. In 2019, lifespans became shorter, but that was probably a one-time consequence of COVID. The trend line of longer lifespans is expected to continue after that dip. Now, older workers are making a greater contribution to the economy compared to previous generations. Firms have even begun to offer grandternity leave to retain grandparents in the workforce. The poor are getting richer. Yeah, here's what the socialists really dislike, and it's where McKenzie explains that the wealth of the bottom half of the U.S. population increased in real dollars between 1989 and 2022. He goes on to explain that the bottom half's share of total wealth decreased from 3.8 to 3.1% during those years. You see, Christians care about the poor, not the distance between the rich and the poor. Those who care about the distance are violating the 10th commandment about avoiding covetousness. Let me repeat the first half of Mr. McKenzie's explanation about the wealth of the bottom half increasing in real dollars. My sophomores at Dallas Baptist University know that real means after inflation. So even though the current administration has thrown an inflation party that has harmed them, the poor have still managed to get richer. Christians celebrate that. But socialists concentrate on the second half explanation from that Wall Street Journal article about the share of wealth of the poor declining from 3.8 to 3.1%. Mr. McKenzie notes in his article, quote, "Senator Bernie Sanders denounces today's wealth concentration as morally obscene. President Biden seeks to temper the growing wealth accumulation by imposing a billionaire's tax. Of course, the rich are getting richer at a faster rate. That's just the rules of the road. If a rich guy starts with 1 million and the poor guy starts with 1,000, as the economy lifts all boats, it's going to lift the big boat further." The only time I can find where the poor got rich at a faster rate than the wealthy was during the Trump administration. And that's because his economic policies aligned with growth in the lower classes. And Marian Tupy and Gail Pooley point out in their very good book titled Superabundance that when measured by time price, that is, how long a person has to work to buy products and services, today's poor are getting richer all the time. Consumer surplus. Socialists are good at demand, but they're terrible at supply. They start at the point where a person has money and proceed from there. They want the government to get that money with no consideration for the supply that produced it. In economics, we call it consumer surplus. In a competitive environment, every time you buy something, you get richer. I joke with my DBU students, don't tell my wife Ginger about this. But listen, each time Ginger buys something at a competitive free market, she gets richer. That's because she makes the free will choice to exchange money for goods or services. Think about it. If she's self-interested economic consumer, she would choose to get richer with every exchange instead of poor. When there are competitive suppliers, she can do that. When there's a lack of free markets, meaning industry concentration, which can lead to a monopoly. Then she gets poorer with every purchase. That is why, by the way, a Christian economist favors a middle point between pure capitalism and pure socialism. At the pure capitalism end, companies produce monopolies. At the pure socialism end, the government does it. Now, back to our rich old guy. He earned that money by making others richer. Seems like the government should encourage rather than discourage that. Ginger and I often share a line from the book Extreme Leadership by Willink and Babin, which says, you get the behavior you tolerate. Yeah, that's exactly right. Our government has the power to encourage positive economic behaviors and discourage negative behaviors. Allowing people to keep the producer surplus they created by serving their fellow neighbors should be encouraged, not discouraged. Death taxes. Socialists have set their sights on inheritance as a way to redistribute wealth and fund the government. Until recently, the laws of Louisiana forbade passing wealth on to only one of several children. It had to be divided equally. The Old Testament tradition had held that it was most all of it passed to the eldest son. But we're supposed to live in a free society, so shouldn't people be free to pass along the inheritance as they wish? Okay, let's use an example of the big guy in the family who Hunter Biden calls his dad. Let's say he accumulated some wealth and is near death. The liberals want the inheritance to fund the Leviathan government because the kids didn't earn it, and they have no just right to it. But shouldn't we ask, where did the government get the right to that money? The right is not greater than the kids' rights, and the government didn't earn it either. There's quite a lot of data showing that the wealth is not effectively transferred between multiple generations, but I don't have time to unpack that today. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of movement in and out of the top quintile of income earners. 10% of us will be there at some point in our lives. To life, L'chaim, to life, as Tevye sang in Fiddler on the Roof, which the Democrat Party has changed in recent years to read Lamita, which means to death, meaning of the unborn and the aged. President Obama spoke for the death crowd when he said, maybe you're better off not having the surgery, but just taking a painkiller. Look, from 1940 to 2019, Americans' life expectancy rose by almost 16 years. Now, that's really good news for old guys like me. So let's think about this. If people are living longer and thus aggregating a larger corpus of wealth, that would encourage their heirs to perform euthanasia on pops so they can inherit the wealth, if they can get away with it. Yeah, that seems like a really morose view, but Christians understand that people have a fallen nature. So we favor making rules that encourage positive, not negative behavior. I'm not ready to take on the evils of euthanasia today, but let's just assume that it's economically advantageous for the folks who inherit the money, but it's a form of evil for the person who loses his life. The Netherlands is running a devious experiment with the right to life, as it is called. Intergenerational families. My grandson asked my age last week, and when I answered about 69, he responded, wow, that's really old. And I informed him that grandpas are old. It's a blessing to live to an older age. In a song titled, The Older I Get, Alan Jackson sings this line, if they found a fountain of youth, I wouldn't drink a drop. And that's generally true of older people. I heard a presentation by an economist a few years ago about the extension of life in developed economies. He pointed out that his college-age daughter had a meaningful relationship with her great-grandmother. Think about it. Only 2 of my 4 grandparents were alive when I was growing up. Both died when I was in college. The Economist was pointing out that his daughter not only has all 4 grandparents, she also has a great-grandparent that is cognizant enough to have lunch with her great-granddaughter. We truly do live in a blessed age where medical researchers have used their image of God creativity to discover ways to enrich and lengthen our lives. It's good for the economy, too. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time.